Hi, good evening, everyone. Very warm welcome to all of you this Friday evening. Mukherjee is hoping she joins in quickly. Hi, Richa. We are waiting for Richa Mukherjee. I've already accepted a connection request. Good evening. I can see author Sanchali there. Good evening. Here's hoping we connect with Richa soon. There's some issue there. I guess she's connecting. Hi, good evening, Richa.
Hi, good evening, Kinshok. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good. I must say, you have a very, I don't know, infectious smile.
Oh, is it?
So,
Thank you so
yeah.
much. Coming
So,
from a person like you makes a lot of, thank you.
no,
So,
no, I've had a
before
bit
we
of
get into
a,
the conversation, Richa, I
hmm
just like to give a brief introduction about you, and then
Sure.
you have the floor. Yeah. So, for the guests who've joined, I just wanted to introduce Richa to you. She's a writer and a poet. She's an ex-journalist, a former journalist, and an advertising professional. And once basically she found her purpose in telling tales, she completely graduated into being an author and a poet full time. And her first book was a collection of poems titled A Penchant for Prose, after which she went on to write her first novel, I Didn't Expect to Be Expecting. Wow. And then she had Kanpur Khufia Private Limited, really intrigued by that title, which is a humorous thriller. I write, murder mysteries and thrillers, so humorous thriller would be good to read. And Excess Baggage is the newest one, the youngest baby on the block.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, it is the youngest baby. And
And I
somehow,
think you've also co-authored a couple of books with Ravinder Singh. I
yes,
was seeing in your profile.
that was purely because I was being an obnoxious, sweaty hound at the time. I wasn't being productive at all, and I used to see everybody's Insta stories, and they were writing God knows how many books, and I said, look, when I come out of the pandemic, I have to have written something during this time and got something to show for
Right.
it. So no, this opportunity came by where Ravinder was writing a few stories for Harper, and they were experimenting with e-singles. God knows these 2 years have been a time during which we have reached out and tried and experimented with every goddamn thing from our kitchens to our careers. So
I know.
yeah, so that was something new, and I hadn't. While romance, as you always, like humor, romance, these are tracks that run in pretty much every book, every story that you write.
Right.
But
Right.
I hadn't specifically written romance, so I had to switch
Right.
on that button, and it was a very interesting experiment, and I had a good time. And every experience, every story that you write, I mean, leaves you with some kind of a some experience and some takings, takeaways. So it was interesting.
So can you walk us through like how is it to be co-authoring a book with a big guy like Ravinder, who's already a big guy as far as romance books are concerned, love stories are concerned. He's made a name for himself, and
Mm-hmm.
co-authoring, what does it mean? So how do you kind of interact, and how much do you do? How much does he do? What all it takes, basically, for the newer guys who are getting into this on author entrepreneurship business, I like to
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
So how does it work really?
Uh, a big hi to everybody who's joined. I'm seeing a lot of highs. Hi, Jitiman. Hi, Deepika, I think Sanchali had also joined earlier. So yes, as far as collaborations are concerned, uh, it's not for everyone. And this I'm not saying is the experience I was left with. It is also because I've had a lot of conversations with people, who've been part of collaborations. The way it worked for me was that it was a collaboration in pretty much every way, because from the ideation to the writing, of course we had really good editors at the other end of the table as well, but that's why it was fun, because we used to throw ideas at each other, and we tried really hard not to make them pandemic ideas, stuck in rooms, this, that,
Yeah,
and the other, because you're sensitive to context, conversations, and environment, and you that's the first thing, that's the lowest hanging fruit. So one
right.
of my stories, the first story, which incidentally everybody enjoyed a lot, Love Bites, was about
Sure.
the pandemic, focusing largely on food, because we were eating a lot at that point in time. So it was, it was a amalgamation of that, of the experience, and what all everybody was going through at that point in time. We used to. So it started with that one particular idea. Oddly, I didn't even know how many we were supposed to write. He just told me that, this is not even a novella, this is a bit of an experiment, and how about this idea? So this is one idea that happened. The second idea was his. The third idea was combined. So somehow or the other, it worked. So we did a lot of ideations and put all of that down. There was no tearing urgency to get them out at a particular point in time. So we kind of chewed on it, for a while, let it marinate.
Yeah.
And then the writing began. So there are, I used to write certain portions of it. He used to critique it, and then he would kind of change it around and send it back to me. Then we would have a call and say, okay, this doesn't work for me. So I appreciate the fact that it was quite collaborative. There were certain
Okay.
sections, certain stories where he wrote more. There were certain stories where I wrote more. But that, I think, is the
Okay.
basic essence of a collaboration. So, but
Right.
like I said, so it was a pleasant and interesting experience for me because I know him. I understand how he writes. Having said that, whenever somebody enters or steps into a collaboration, you have to understand that you're not trying to emulate, you're not trying to fill into
Right.
anyone's shoes. What you're trying to do
Right.
is make it an interesting amalgamation of your storytelling style and someone else's, and you kind of fit into each other's corners and
Sure.
crevices and make it a nice cohesive story. So that is,
So
I think, something. So I'll tell you where the loopholes are, Kinshuk. So I
So
want to stab people. Yeah.
before that, just one small thing. I
Mm-hmm.
particularly interesting is the analogy you gave
Mm-hmm.
about the marination of the idea. Coming from a, bong, it makes so much sense.
I am married to a Bengali. I begin my days talking about food and I end them talking about
I know,
food.
I
So
know.
yes,
So I have been in Calcutta now 22 years. I know that.
exactly.
Completely
So
appreciate, yeah. And the food here is so awesome. Finger
absolutely. And
licking good, as they say.
incidentally, I am going, I'm going to be visiting at some point in time. So I've told my in-laws there's a whole list of things that I'm digressing because it has to do with food. We'll come back to a point. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
rolls are my Achilles heel, and the roadside rolls across,
I know,
around every
I
para.
know.
So yeah, I don't want them coming
Have
out of
you
any hotel.
have you tried Rang De Basanti Dhaba for your rolls? Sector 5.
Really?
Awesome. Simply
Okay.
awesome. So it's to
Okay.
die for.
So this time, so I'm definitely going to try that out. And another thing I've told my father-in-law is I've been reading about, these cabin 61 and all these, quaint, small little things stuck in various corners of the city. I said, so
Yeah.
I really, so my father was posted in Cal as well. He was in the revenue services. So we were in Calcutta for about 3 years, 3 or 4
Okay.
years. So I always have to go to National Library because we stayed right next to it. And,
Okay.
I do that entire round
Trip.
and then to the
I
food.
know, I know.
So yeah, so
Sure.
that's the okay. Yes, we must go back to our
Yeah, yeah.
original point, and I've forgotten what it
Sure.
was.
You were saying what are the loopholes when
Yes,
you're doing such kind of a story?
yes. So what tends to happen is, I have written across genres, Kinshuk, but I gravitate towards. I was in that frame of mind that I was feeling murderous because of the pandemic, and also because I gravitate towards writing thrillers. So
Right.
every single story I was coming up with, there had to be some kind of a twist, and I essentially wanted to kill people. He wanted to kill people as well, but as part of a romance. So he said, I want sad endings. I'm talking about the heart. Don't go stabbing people and making mysteries where there aren't. So,
I know.
that's what tends to happen. So we went to spend a lot of time, changing a lot of paths around because I was thinking a certain way and he was thinking a certain way. And he kind of
Right.
wanted to. And another thing is, it can't be about egos. At the end of the day, I'm writing romance. I'm writing
Sure.
in collaboration with Ravinder, who's essentially known for romance.
Right.
And that is the imprint I was kind of becoming a part of, right? Merging into.
Right.
So then
Right.
I can't sit and go exploring, my creativity. And it's basically because I've been part of marketing and advertising, I understand that while it's, creativity is important, on the other hand,
Correct.
you have to kind of, walk that fine line. So all my
Sure.
creative counterparts used to appreciate me because all the scripts they didn't want to write, I wrote, and I was in account management. So then I could do
Okay.
both. So those are the,
Sure.
that's the kind of hat you have to put on. And you have to
Right.
understand, that it needs to be a collaborative in that sense. Otherwise it won't work if egos take over. So
Absolutely agree with you. And there's so much of hard work. You have to also understand, like you rightly said, you had to understand the way Ravinder himself writes, and then that entire process, that melting of pots happening together, and so much of ideation. So it gives you so much more, in future also. You understand different, and while you were more of a humor and a thriller writer, you've been able to successfully work on a romance novel also. Two of them, in fact, is what I understand. So when is your new novel coming up, which will be pure romance?
So I was having this conversation with my daughter yesterday, and over lunch, I told her about all the, this Bollywood story essentially that I was a part of, which was part of my, I guess, courtship period, and how her and my, her Baba and I got together. And she laughed her head off at the end of it, and she said, "Mama, you have to write this. It's so funny." I said, "It's not funny. It was chaotic, and I was howling the whole time it was happening. In hindsight, everything seems funny." So I think
Right.
in terms of pure romance, if I ever were to kind of explore, maybe I'd gravitate towards something that's, I guess, a low hanging fruit for me and would be something organic and interesting to write. But honestly speaking, Kinshuk, I think I've always chosen my themes and genres somehow in a very organic way. And I'm always on something called uh, gut cruise, gut control.
Sure.
Because my
Yeah,
husband is in automotive, so I have to come up with these cheesy, tacky lines.
yeah.
But that's essentially
Right.
what it is, because I wasn't thinking of themes or publishers or what it is that an ideal reader could be when I wrote my first book or second or third. And maybe that is that's an error on my part. But I didn't expect to be expecting came to me because I was just surrounded by that kind of stimulus at that point in time. I was in my maternity break, and it just happened, and it was so enjoyable that I decided, that was the thing that kind of pushed me into seriously considering, writing. I mean, I continued to work
Right.
for a couple of years after that, but that's how it started.
Sure.
Even for Kanpur Khufia, it was a very impulsive, in the moment kind of thing that happened. And I love consuming the genre. Everybody does. But just because you like watching something or reading something doesn't mean you can do a great job at it. But that's where the challenge came. So,
So for the viewers that are there, I just wanted to mention, I think Kanpur Khufia and the other one also, Excess Baggage, are at deep discounts today. I saw that in Amazon.
oh, wow,
So people who want to really go ahead and buy it, today is the day for you guys.
how
And we
sweet.
have
I appreciate this
Richa here.
research, which I didn't do myself. So,
Okay.
thank
Okay.
you. Hmm.
Another thing I had this, I just want to understand. So your daughter, you are saying you already have conversations with her about your like past and your love life and all of that. So how old is she? You like,
She's
it
just
looks like
turned
you have a
8.
daughter who's like, sorry?
She's a paka bodi, if you know what I mean. You can explain it to
I know,
people.
I know, I know.
So
She's
she's,
8, you said.
yes, she's 8 going on 80, 85 actually, if I have to be specific. So, yeah, I just realized that these kids are being churned out very differently these days. So the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
bet to get into their world is have conversations and demystify everything, I suppose, answer all their
Right,
questions. So,
right.
and I honestly want to hire her as my PR agent because she pushes out my books more than I ever could. With gay abandon, she talks about them. I can cringe, but she will just be like, "This is my mama's book, you buy it." And I said, "Okay, fine. I'll unleash you on the world because I do a terrible job." So,
Super awesome. actually nowadays kids, actually they're born with that, laptop in their hands, and they have so much more knowledge than we ever had in our times. And we
Absolutely.
grew up in a very different way, very organic, vegetable way, if we can
Very.
talk about it.
Extremely.
so, so what's what are you working on right now? Which genre? What kind of a work? Or is it again, as you said, the biographical love story, autobiographical love story, if I may?
I think that'll have to wait a while. Like I
Okay.
said, I think I'm in that state of mind where I'm still gravitating towards thrillers and experimenting within that, because I think that canvas is vast. Often people ask me, don't you think it's limiting? And you yourself will know, because you've written 3 books yourself. It it depends, because, and I'm also trying to merge 2 genres, where one is about tension and making you uncomfortable, and the other one's about relief. So, it's always about constantly challenging yourself. But while I'm writing, I finished KKPL 2. So I didn't even realize. So that's something I wanted to ask you later, actually, that, I never thought that this would become some sort of a franchise, and it would be, I would be writing a part 2. But I've written a part 2, and that comes
Sequel.
out in, yes, a sequel, and that comes out in May. And incidentally, I've
Okay.
almost finished writing the first cringy draft. All first drafts are cringy, as you know, of my 5th book. But with the state of the market and the way things are, it's going to take a while to get out. So yeah,
Right.
that's what I have been working on.
That's awesome to hear. Sequels are always very special, and you get into a sequel only when you realize that the story was not complete, and your readers and your fans come back to you asking for more. So
Sure.
that's really special. I wrote a trilogy, so it was all like a mystery genre, specifically murder mystery. And after the trilogy got completed, I started getting some emails and also DMs, PMs, basically saying, uh, "You've shown this guy, this hero, the inspector, to be a big guy since the first book, and he's like all over the place and known to everyone. But how did he become big? What did he do to become big? Why don't you write a prequel to this?" So I have gone ahead and written a prequel. So now
Mm-hmm.
it's a 4-book series with a
Oh,
prequel.
lovely. Wonderful.
So yeah, so basically, your readers also give you a lot of. They are able
Clues as to
to
where
help
should you
you.
where, yeah, exactly. I
Yes,
mean, they
yes.
determine the journey,
They
in a lot of
determine the
ways.
journey of your
Mm.
character. They determine the journey to a great extent if you are able to connect. So nowadays, with social media, people have connected so much more than earlier. The earlier, it used to be so difficult to approach an author and to be able to speak to the author. But now with social media, I see you are like there every single day on social media. You have some posts here and
Yeah,
there
I've,
on
I've been asked
Insta.
by my mom-in-law, don't you have anything
I
better to
know.
do in life? Why is it that either you're doing that or you're shimming in front of the camera doing these weird reels? So I said, it's not about, I don't coerce myself, Kinshuk. It's just that I have realized one thing, that I cannot sit on my high horse. I write contemporary fiction, I write thrillers, I write, massy books, and I have no qualms in admitting that. Um,
Right.
and these are real earthy stories, and that's how I connect with the readers. And I can't assume that one lit fest somewhere and, another interaction here, the world
Mm,
has changed, and as vilified
true.
as technology is, and it will continue to have it detrimental in a particular way. I think it's made it such a democratic space, and you can pretty much reach uh, you know any cross section of the population in places where you would never imagine possible. And
Sure.
so much so that, and a lot of people ask me about, why you have a publisher, then why is it that you have to push yourself? It doesn't matter whether you're traditionally published or whether you're self-published.
Yeah.
I was just having a discussion day before with somebody, and explaining to them there are about 200, 300 titles, used to be, I don't know what, post pandemic, titles hitting shelves. What do you expect the publishers to do? Just wait starry eyed for your next book? It doesn't work like that, and that's naive for anybody to assume. So there are portions of the year where you will have promotions, and they'll keep looping you into relevant promotional spaces. But
Correct.
the rest of the time, you have to, I'm not saying that 24/7 I'm posting and I'm trying to create content, because that is really, really hard, and it's an arduous task. And then it'll distract me. But what is relevant to I write what is relevant to what I write, or things that I mean, I try to create content buckets which are essentially about either me or books, or generally about life, and that can confuse people, but that's all I can offer. I'm here, you please reach out to me, I'd love to speak to you, but more than that, I just think it becomes a distraction. I certainly can't do it because I really
Yeah.
admire people who can, but I can't do it in such a concerted way, but you
But
have
you're
that
one of
reach
the
is important.
but I think you are doing it pretty well with your. I think you are a pro blog chatter. I think I was seeing it somewhere while I was doing my homework on your profile. You're on blog chatter, and you are, I think, one of the pros there. And for most of the authors who are like who've just over the last 2-3 years got into this business, blogging is one of the most difficult things they have been finding, because you might go ahead and create a website for yourself and you might start blogging over there, but there are hardly 4 views a day, right? So
Yes.
how do you kind of become a blog chatter guy, and how do you take it forward if you are really into that, if you can produce material every, say, week? How do
Mm-hmm.
you really do it?
So this again happened as a consequence of my wanting to write, but having no ambition in terms of publishing at any point in time. I had no idea, right? So
Okay.
when I started off, I would say I was writing poetry essentially at the time. This is it. It happened uh, around the same time when I started writing. So all the creative juices happened together. Before that, since I was a child, I was writing poetry, but again, I never channelized it anywhere. So I realized that I was in a state of mind and a point in my life where it was really solitary. I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. I couldn't figure out how to get back to work because that reintegration becomes very strange for a lot of women because it's not easy. So I started writing, and then I found out about blogging. I didn't do it because it's happened for a lot of people. They become bloggers and then they become authors, but I wasn't thinking of it as a platform at that point in time. At that point in time, all I knew was that these are the means and methods by which I can get what I'm writing shared with other people. I can give a comment on what other people are writing, and I am somehow owning this entire space, and I can put down anything I feel like instead of just putting it on paper. And who are we kidding? The gratification and
Sure.
validation comes when somebody has read
Sure.
it and somebody is commenting,
Right.
right? If you want to write for yourself, I can write
Right.
in my 15 diaries sitting out here. So I think
True.
it was a very empowering feeling. That's where it started. Like you said, Kinshuk, it takes a lot of effort because I really admire the fact that people have stuck to that journey. I have fallen on and off that wagon. I have focused more on the novels, but there are a lot of people who do it consistently, passionately
Okay.
every single day, and you have to entrench yourself so much so that there are a lot of these initiatives that they come up with on a yearly basis. There are about 7 to 8 hardcore blogging
Wow.
events wherein you have to
Wow.
commit to writing one post every day. It's not easy. Then you have to tag people. Then you have to read. There is a certain requirement of reading a minimum criteria, or so it's not easy, and people are doing this
Hmm.
alongside work and so many other distractions that we all have.
Right.
So
Right.
I have fallen on and off, but I met a lot of
Hmm.
friends along the way, which is why a lot of
Hmm.
people say that should I do this for this? Somewhere along the way, if your intentions are not right, and it's everybody finds out if you're being disingenuous and just turning up whenever you have books, right? So these friends are friends I've made when I started that journey, but
Okay.
somehow or the other, while I haven't been consistent with the blogging,
Sure.
blog chatter came along. I made a lot of friends there. Richa, who runs it, is a lovely lady, and she comes up with the most amazing plans for even authors. They have this platform where you can publish your own book once a year, and they help
Hmm.
you put it out. They help you put it on Amazon and this, that, and the other. So they have some very good programs running for aspiring authors.
Okay.
Then Sheroes happened. Then recently Cool Kanya happened. So
Right.
I have started mentoring over the last couple of years a lot of women
Right.
centric communities as well.
Okay.
And it's just interesting because then you get to, and most recently, if you've heard of Tell Me Your Story, that's run by a very lovely lady called Koral Das Gupta. So she, gets a lot of these academics and authors and everybody together and runs these programs. So I just feel that, it's interesting to be able to have that privilege to read work, somebody else's work, to be able to say something meaningful or inspire someone. You never know what you say hits home, with who.
Sure.
And the blogging part, like you said, specifically has happened over a period of time. If you only want to be
Right.
a blogger, there are many things you can get at the end of that rainbow, which is you can get content writing gigs, you can monetize your site. There are so many tools and techniques. It's mind boggling. I had no
Okay.
idea that it was so technical. Like, there were times I had to reach
Right.
out to people and I couldn't understand for the life of me how people could create time for it. But if
Right.
if you want to entrench yourself, everybody is very, very helpful. And these are friends you're going to kind of make for life if you really, really genuinely, want to be a blogger.
Sure.
So, and it's
Sure.
always a very good place to be if you want to later become, publish your books as well. Because now I don't think these
Right.
are very separate spaces. All the lines are blurred. As long as you're writing, it doesn't
Right.
matter. And, that universe is opened up and that canvas is really broad. So you can start with blogging, but it takes effort for sure.
So, how do you see the indie publishing journey now that a lot of people, they haven't even tested markets as far as the trad publishing business is concerned. They have directly gone on to become indie published authors. And while we know that a lot of content keeps coming out, like you rightly said, about 300 odd books a day was being churned out in India on a daily basis. And most of it, like almost 90% of it, was new authors, or maybe 95% of it was new authors who were indie published authors. And so there have been a lot of talk in the market about these books not having been edited properly. So people have fine ideas. Everyone has an idea or two, and they're able to create content. But there has been, so if you're a trad published author, people view you differently. If you're an indie published author and you've not gone through that kind of a detailed work uh, which a trad published author goes through, then obviously there'll be something which is maybe not as good. The content may be good, but it's not come out that well polished as
Sure.
somebody would like to read. So, what is your maybe? How would you like to tell the new indie published authors what should they really do? What is the process to follow? Even if they want to self-publish something, what is the
Mm.
process they should definitely follow? What kind of editing work they should get done? How is it that they should really look at all of this together in a holistic manner and go ahead doing their work?
So I think the starting point, Kinshuk, has to be, what is your purpose? In terms of, it sounds very intellectual, but it's not. It's very simple, because your purpose is going to become your driving force in terms of determining which way you're going and which method you're adopting, right? Because I know there are people like my father-in-law, who's written a book about hobby farming. He wants to write about samosas. He just wants to write, and he writes really well, but he's not
Okay.
interested in whether there are markets for it, or he just wants something under his name that he's put together, where,
Okay.
and it's very research oriented and everything. And he's gone ahead and self-published it, and he's very happy just giving to his friends and having it available on Amazon and sending somebody the link. So there is that kind
Right.
of purpose. There are people who want to get published because they just want to be in this whole enjoy this whole social aspect of being invited to
Right.
fests and having interactions with readers and all of that. Power to them as well. And then there are people who want to take it up as a career, who want to monetize it, because we all want to create
Mm.
value at the end of the day.
Right.
Nobody's there, because
Right.
you hear this very often, that this romantic notion about writers, that you write and then you set it out in the world, let it fly birdie fly. Why? At the end of the day, if I am creating something out of a joyful space in my heart, there,
Sure.
why should I have to not, why should I not monetize it? Why can't I earn a living out
Sure.
of it? And we're still at that stage in this country, and well, internationally it's slightly better because a little more organized, but we're all in that state at the moment, even though things are better, that we cannot let's just say we cannot uh, consider writing a means of livelihood at the moment. But
Right.
there are ways and means of doing that. So for a person who wants to do that, or with any of these purposes, self-publishing is an absolutely valid and stigma-free space, because the realities of the market are abysmal at the moment, and they always have been, because there are,
Sure.
on an average, a publisher gets about I don't know. I mean, somebody was telling me 500 to 1,000 manuscripts on a weekly basis. So
Wow.
even if you're following all the guidelines and everything, you cannot assume that luck does not. So which is why I say I have put in a lot of hard work, but it is also a
Right.
consequence of luck and being at the right place at the right time, because that plays a
Sure.
key role. So
Sure.
if you have a manuscript ready and you know that you really, really want to publish, why not try the traditional publishers? Because there is this, I mean, everybody wants to. There's a certain
Hmm.
charm in it, so why not? You have
Hmm.
to do your research in terms of understanding. Everybody says, I know this one person who spent about maybe the last 10 years saying that I want to be published by two publishers in the US. And if they don't publish me, I am going to wait. So he's still waiting. So you can't be picky
Wow.
and choosy. Exactly. And he's, I mean, or, power to him as well. But the point is, most of the people get disenchanted and they stop writing altogether. So if you have a manuscript, you have to ensure that first you're doing your research and understanding that these are the categories of publishers, A, B, C, whatever it is, and there is no stigma in approaching anyone. You do the kind of
Sure.
research of what they have been publishing, what they usually publish, and then you either, I've seen people who send in submissions all at one go, or then they bide their time and they say, okay, I don't have I'm in no hurry. I'm going to wait about 6 to 8 months, because anyways the response frequency is anywhere from 1 month to 3 months, or some won't even respond.
Right.
So it purely
Right.
depends. So you go about it that way, and if nothing works out, then there's KDP. There's a lot of communities and a lot of internationally. I mean, I had no idea that more than Instagram and Twitter or any other social media, Facebook has a humongous number of groups for indie publishing. And
Yeah.
so even within romance, you'll have specializations and slices of groups with
Sure.
thousands of members who push each other's
Sure.
content, and all of this.
Right.
So there's a
Right.
huge support there. So I have seen enough
Right.
self-published authors. In fact, I was just speaking with her yesterday. She's very sweet. Stuti Changle, if you've heard of her, Savi Sharma.
Okay.
These are girls who have written
Okay.
something that they really, really wanted to. They've written these inspirational, motivational stories about young adults, and
Okay.
they have created an audience for themselves online. And so much so that
Wow.
one got picked up by, I don't remember Savi Sharma's publisher, but Suti got picked up by Penguin. And that is how, I mean, Ravinder Singh's journey started that way as well. He was really wanted to tell his story, and then he sold it
Right.
himself on footpaths and all of that. And then
Okay.
Penguin came and picked him up. So there's absolutely uh, no dearth of options, really. It's just that if you are in it for the long run, you have to explore your avenues
Sure.
in a sensible way, instead of just running it all dry and just moping in the corner and saying, oh my god, nobody's ever going to publish me. Andali Wajid, who's a prolific writer, and she's written about, I think, some 35 books till date. She's been published
Wow.
by Rupa, Haggett, HarperCollins, everybody. But she, between two books, because she writes really fast, she self-publishes about three more in the middle. So
Wow.
even Chitravi Divakarni has, done one. So it depends. So that's why I said this purpose is very
Right.
important. There are many,
Sure.
many ways and avenues. It depends, and there is no. And I know of someone who's published a very intellectual book, and there were no takers for it. He went to agents. He was very well connected, but he could not find a publisher. He published it, and because he had so many contacts in the media and everywhere, the word got out, and he's sitting at
Okay.
Jaipur Lit Fest up without finding a publisher. So everybody
Wow.
will have their own journey, and I can come up with
True.
50,000 more such examples. It's just that you try traditional publishers, you try indie publishing, you try KDP, whatever it is. Find your
Right.
groups, push out their work, push out yours, and if you really want to do it, you'll find a way.
Yeah. So I think Neil De Silva also is one of them. I think he started also as an indie published author, and later on, I think everyone has published him.
Yeah, and
So yeah,
he's
the
doing
only
so
thing is
well.
the content has to be good, and yeah, you have to go through proper editing, proofreading process.
Absolutely,
It
and there
has
are
to be thorough.
wonderful editing. There are a lot of these individuals who do it as well, and
Right.
there are
Right.
agencies who do it as well. Some of them I have heard have had a bad experience, because everybody pretends to offer these services even though they're not really good at it. So you have to be thorough
Right.
and rely on some recommendations. That'll work. So
Sure.
if it's
Sure.
recommended by friends or something, the chances are they do a much better job, because it's vetted through
Job
somebody
than others.
else. So the
Sure.
editing, but the beta reading, of course, needs to be people who are connected with you and also disconnected with you in that sense, so it has to be a healthy mix of somebody you really rely on, who's close to you, and then somebody who's just a friend, whose opinion you value, who's articulate and who's smart about, giving feedback. So that has to be
So
a combination.
In the US, they have a whole industry around this beta reading bit and the ARCs.
Mm-hmm.
But in India, we don't find there's nothing like if officially you want to go ahead professionally find beta readers, there's nothing like that. We don't have a body out there, or we don't have individuals who professionally do it.
No,
But
also
I think
there's
what
so
you're
many
rightly
other of
saying,
these interesting avenues. There's something called PitMad. I don't know if you've heard about it. PitMad is
no, I
basically an event that happens international in the US once a year. You're just
okay,
supposed to go onto PitMad and do a hashtag. It's an
okay,
online festival of pitching your work to publishers and agents, and that's so fantastic because it's basically people get. It's just like NaNoWriMo, right? Either you're writing or you're supporting the people who are writing. So PitMad is
correct,
essentially, I can be part of PitMad and I can be posting and reposting a lot of work. So by virtue of getting noticed with most reposts, or by virtue of, I guess, something that you've written or caught somebody's fancy, so there are people who just come on saying, hi, I'm so and so agent, please send me your work. So that's very cool, and it's a very democratic process. Obviously the problem
sure,
is that you're exposing your ideas to so many people, so there have been
so many
people,
people,
there's been a little bit of plagiarism here and there, but I think it's a
right.
very democratic and interesting way of opening
So
it up to
interestingly,
everyone.
there's a question which has come on this only. So I think what is that one element that a writer should be careful about when their book is taken for a big screen? So you've already got, I think, 2 screen adaptation works which are on. This question is very pertinent in that case. So as an author, what all should we be careful about while we are pitching for movie adaptation or serial adaptation?
Again,
Because there are so many channels out there and so many languages that is coming. You can
yeah.
never be comfortable, right? So you never know. How can you be very secure that?
So one, it is in terms of the content itself, and one is in terms of the approach. So as far as the
Right.
content is concerned, you can be rest assured that 90% of the times there are screenwriters who are going to be writing your story. Until and unless you have done screenwriting work. So there's a friend of mine called K. Hari who writes, horror, and Sonia Behel, who's written A Year of Wednesday. So there's a lot of people who write, who've done screenplay, and as a result of that, they have written their own work, as in they've taken it to screen. But 95% of the times, I think it is going to be given to screenwriters who have a rapport with the producers, because there's so many people in the creative process. So by
Right.
and large, you will not have a control over who writes the screenplay or the dialogue, because there are specialists in that industry for everything. On an
Sure.
average, within a production, there's about 180 to 200 people. And I'm not talking about the essential decision makers, which also will be just about 10 to 12 at least, who will have a say in how your
Wow.
story turns out. So
Wow.
that is about the content. But in terms of the approach, yes, there's a lot of outfits, who are setting this up. Siddharth Jain from Story Inc. is one of the most reliable people in that sense, because he's been doing this, and he's the Baba Ramdev of screen to book to screen
I
adaptation in
know.
that sense. So
Yeah.
so he started it all essentially. So he's got a firm footing in the industry, and he has a lot of contacts, and he tries to reach out to upcoming new authors as well. It doesn't matter whether you're published or you're indie or whatever. So trust factor, especially when it comes to deals, is very important. If it's coming, a lot of people don't have audiovisual rights for their work. They lie with the
Mm-hmm.
publishers as well as their agents. So then again, a lot of the factors are out of your control. The commercials are
Right.
discussed between the production house, the person who's greenlit the project, and the agent and your publishers. But if you
Okay.
have control, so a lot of people are actively doing that now, which has its merits and demerits, where they keep the rights, audiovisual rights, to themselves, which means then you're opening yourself up to this, this table of negotiations. It's always better to have somebody from the industry or who's in the know of these kind of things, because this negotiation is not like going and market buying vegetables in the market or doing something, or selling products and shampoos and oil. It is a different kind of negotiation, and it requires different skills. So if you have an agent that way, or if you're a publisher, it depends on how you do it. Get sounding over eager and taking anything that comes your way is also a problem. The market is just
Right.
opening up. There's a lot of interest from OTT. You'll have lots of, DMs and messages and emails coming in saying, story, I've been contacted by producers and directors and all of that. But you have to take a step back, analyze what kind of work they've done. What is the
Mm.
past track record? What is it that has converted? Because in this, you're approached almost on a daily basis, but the conversion percentage is abysmal, right? Because most
Right.
of these deals are option deals. They have the option of making, what they're buying, but whether they exercise that option is a consequence of many factors. And when it
Right.
happens, the good Lord knows, and the producers know. So it takes a while. So these are the normal, watch outs. Instead of being over eager, do your homework, and of course, if you have your
Mm.
publisher and agent with you, it helps because
So,
they know what works.
so you are working with Siddharth Jain. Uh,
Yes, for both these books. So it's basically a collaboration between both my publishers and him. So I'm not
okay.
essentially contracted to him. It's almost as if it's like a conglomerate representing me. So they've come
Sure.
together for
Sure.
this.
Sure. Awesome. So, what is that one thing you would like to tell the young upcoming authors? What should they do? So, nowadays, because we see there's humongous talent coming in, these guys are like super brilliant, young lot. They have so much information in their minds, they have so much creativity, they want to actually achieve things. And they're also happy going solo without doing work, without having a day job. So,
Far more
what is
courageous
that
than our
one?
generation is.
I know, I know. So, what is that one nugget of knowledge you would want to pass on to these guys?
There's many nuggets, but I want to just mention a different nugget. I think they're smart enough. All I want to say is it's as important as the inspiration and the skill to write. I think it's as important to be patient because this is
Hmm.
not about instant gratification. If you're expecting that it'll happen in possibly any job across the world, across industries, it will not happen here. Because firstly, it is an act of insanity that you're sitting and conjuring things out of thin air. It is so subjective. Somebody can spit at it, somebody can love it. So firstly, that internal struggle of never being
Right,
happy or sated with exactly what you've written. So I think it's
right,
important to be patient in that sense as well with yourself while you're in that
right,
process. And secondly, you have to be patient with what comes after, because then once the baby, when the birdie has flown, then the birdie has to
Hmm.
pass tests in many zoos before it's accepted
I know,
anywhere. So
I know.
yeah, patience is absolutely key, and your purpose needs to be clear. And I keep telling everybody that understand what you're, why you're doing this, and
Why
then if
you're
you want
why
it,
you're there in this
yeah,
business?
and if you want it, that badly, then I guess then I'll be Paulo Coelho and just say that
So,
the universe will conspire.
from your answer itself, another question comes. You're saying that there'll be, how do you deal with these 1 star and 2 star negative reviews? There will be, as you rightly said,
Absolutely.
you can spit it out, you'd love it. So, what if an initial book comes, a new book comes in, and you get a 1 star rating immediately? What happens then? How
Have
do
a
you take it?
have a rhino hide. Don't let
And
anybody
what is,
percolate that, because I honestly think I can see. I mean, if we're so sensitive that we absorb the entire world and pour that into our stories, it's foolhardy to assume that somebody says something and you will not take that personally. But what you do have to understand is that it is such an intensely subjective thing. It
yeah,
is going to be interpreted through the lens of people with their myriad experiences. You cannot control that. So
right.
I think because I've been in advertising for so long and I've been a journalist and I've taken so much, I mean, to say it indelicately, poop from people all over the world in all different shapes and sizes, that it does hurt for about 5 minutes. Some people are nice.
Yeah,
What I do appreciate it when people, give that feedback and they will just write what didn't work for them. I really
right,
appreciate that. And I just
right.
take that with open arms. There are some people, sometimes it feels, especially there was this one journalist, she took so much time to write about 3 pages dissecting everything. So then I just
Wow.
feel as if, okay, so I didn't find that constructive because, you
Okay.
just get a sense that somebody was just out to I
Get you.
honestly think any endeavor which is creative, whether it's movies or it's, like this whole outpouring on Gehraiyan, I think
Right.
everything is worth, it comes from a body of experiences. It is somebody's
Sure.
lens on the world. You consume it
Sure.
once, you like it, great. If you don't like it, fine, communicate it, but you don't have to be
Right.
nasty about it. So
Sure.
to answer your question, yes, it does, rankle for about a couple,
Okay.
it depends on how it comes to you. And if it's really negative, then I guess I just park it aside and strap on the rhino hide.
Sometimes you also get, only those ratings. There's no review. Just you'll
Yes.
see random 1 star, 2 stars. You don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe even the guy has read it or not.
Yeah. I
So
saw this really negative review after saying that I got my copy damaged. It was 1 star or something. I was like, that is very interesting. I've seen this from of many authors. I've gone to if you go to the reviews,
I know.
one or two will definitely turn up, which will say damaged copy, 1 star. I was like, okay, well, since we're Amazon, rate us.
I know. That's more on Amazon, less on
Yeah.
the author.
Yes.
So you have a packed evening schedule, I know. You
Yes.
wanted to go early. Generally, this particular conversation, we have an hour's conversation.
Oh,
So I've had Kiran Mandral here. I've had Kanchana Banerjee, your friend
yes.
here.
Very good
So I've
friends.
had Neil De Silva, lots of them actually. So
Mm-hmm.
I, you get to talk to so many of them, and you actually acknowledge as a new author. I really acknowledge a lot of work, or maybe the kind of information that comes out talking to pros like you. So all of this, and this is not for me alone. It's for so many indie authors out there who, over the last 2 years, what has happened is because of this pandemic, a lot of people got a little time on their hands, and they were not traveling actually. So after work hours, they got some time on their hands, and they got into this creative side of theirs, and they have
Yeah.
churned out good number of works. And over the last, I think, if you take just about this 1 year, I understand there are average of 300 odd books in India, and an average of 2,000 books in the US. Every single day, people have turned out. So if you have to be there somewhere on the ranking of Amazon, the big daddy of them all, how do you really reach there? So I've had decent times. My 4 books. I've had maybe a 3 month good run with one of them, which was there at the top and within the top five for almost 3 months. But for a guy who's like, you're not entitled to be here. You are doing something else. You are in a different role, different job. It has nothing to do with the industry as such. You are not a known name. You have not been a blogger. You've also not been in the lit fests or any of these places ever. People haven't known you. They have known you in your field of work, which is completely different. So all these guys, and when I talk to them, the one thing which keeps coming out is, see, I'm very serious with this. I want to take it up for the long time. I want to be in this, write 20 plus novels. So, that is something I also heard Elana Johnson speaking in one of the indie meets in the US, and she, in one single year, she published 23 novels. So, and I think 2019, she published 43 novels.
Wow.
Yeah, in a year. And now she's a 7 figure author in the US, and she has a big industry around her working through her books, and a lot of authors she's coaching. But I think something like that, authors talking to authors and uh, helping each other, that is
No, and
to an
that's
extent
that's
missing.
something that it does happen. But firstly, I'd like to say that I am no pro Kinshuk. I am trying to find my way as I go, just like you. And I would also like to tell you that you have already claimed your space with, and whoever's publishing independently, they've claimed their space with the kind of stories that you've already written. No, the heft and credibility of your stories and the memorability of your stories are not defined by your presence at these are all nice things, and they it's good when it happens along the way, and they're gratifying and they're interesting. But nobody can tell you that this is not your place, because you have defined your purpose already. You're already working towards your purpose, as opposed to possibly 2 million other people who have no idea and they're going about their lives willy-nilly. So I think you were ready, you're walking that, you're on your journey anyway. So it's nobody's business to tell you that, this is not the way it's supposed to be, because guess what? This is that one industry where there are no rules. There are no rules to writing. There is no predetermined criteria in terms of what you should be or what you should do to get into it.
Not
It's all welcoming, it's all encompassing, and it's all inclusive. So as long as you keep writing, I think whatever you have charted for yourself, I see you doing these courses in another 10 years. So I guess you should prepare yourself.
I know. And so, how do you see this talk of plotting versus pantsing? Where are you? How are you as a plotter? Are you a plotter? Do you do a thorough plotting before getting into the writing work, or you go with the flow?
I used to find this term very interesting, pantser, when I heard of it earlier.
I
But
know, I know.
it can have several connotations. But anyway, I think I've evolved with every book. I wrote my first summary and plotline for my for the first book was obviously pathetic, because I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And you can read on and read on about it, but you will find your own method eventually. Um,
Sure.
I think by virtue of the fact that thrillers push you towards some kind of a structure, some kind of a discipline, because it is
Right.
not about just expressing yourself and loosely threading together a story of, full of characters. It's about
Sure.
conclusions. It's about slices
Correct.
that need to converge at the end. So I think
Correct.
that kind of infused a little bit of a discipline. But I must tell you that while I have gotten better at structuring and plotting, and I have picked and chosen what works for me, and I don't follow any specific rules that any book has told me, uh, I still am a pantser in the sense that I'm very intuitive. Once I have a very broad structure, and it can be as broad as a couple of chapters at a time, or in this my last book, the one that I'm writing, my fifth book that I've written, I've actually gone as far as detailing out, not to a severe extent, but intensive, but detailing out every chapter. So from a journey of book one, where I was writing at the end of the chapter what the next chapter should possibly be, which is why I landed up at 200,000 words. And my
Wow.
editors and publishers are so kind. They didn't say, "You ditzy Dumbo, what have you done?" They just kindly wrote back saying that you do realize that this is not what we can publish. You chop it down by 100,000 words and then you come back to us. So
Oh God.
yeah, so that's the journey and that's the transition. And structuring and discipline does help me, and plotting does help me.
Right.
But
Right.
I use it to give myself a framework and a broad idea of the beginning and the end, and then I fill the pages. That works for me.
Sure. Yeah, I think, and you're rightly saying for thrillers and mystery, unless you have an end game, unless you have some basic loosely structured character sketch also of the story, it would be very difficult to, because each of your characters, they have a mind of their own, right? When you're
Yes,
writing, and these are important and quite solid characters. If you've created them, they'll take you places. So unless
sure.
you have something binding them together, it's very difficult to.
Then they can be as
I
moody as writers normally are.
I know, I know. I was just seeing if we have any further questions. I think earlier there were a lot of questions which were coming in, which because of our conversation we have not been able to take many a times. And I was just seeing if there's something interesting, I'll put it up to you. Else we'll, yeah. I would like to wave a hand. Nupur Luthra is here today. She's joined us to hear our conversation. Hi, Nupur.
Hi, Nupur.
Lovely you're there. So she was there on the show earlier, and she was so kind to then, the next week she had me on her show.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, we had a lovely
I'm making my
conversation
list.
over an hour.
Eventually, I know in 4 5 years I'll have to have a show as well. So you're already on it, I guess, as is Nupur. So I'm making my list.
Sure. I think Kanchana has started her, I
Yes,
think,
podcast as well. She
podcast.
has the
Lovely.
she has the one on Insta as well as the podcast. I haven't heard the podcast yet. I need to. That
I
will be
also
awesome.
plan to listen to it this weekend. So I think you have to go somewhere. I can already see somebody waving his hand.
No, I normally I do my look to whoever enters. So yeah, one
No,
look.
but have a lovely evening. I think it was a great conversation to have, so much to learn from you, and delighted by your presence. It's so charming, and you are so I would love to meet you once you're here in Kolkata. I would want to take
Over
you
a
to the
roll.
roll shop I
Over a
mentioned.
roll. Yes.
Over a roll, yes.
Over a roll.
Over a chicken roll if you like it.
Yes. And
So,
one Lobhongo Latika. It's the oddest choice, I know, but I love that sweet. I don't know why. And a kheer kodam.
Calcutta is all about sweets and
All.
uh, fish. I think
That's
lovely.
why when I visit, I'm okay to come back looking like one round sweet, but it's all right. It's all good.
Thank you so much for the lovely conversation,
Thank you
Richa.
for having me,
It was
Kinshuk.
nice to have you.
Yes.
And amazing evening we've had. I would like to thank all the guests who were here, who were patiently listening to our the conversation that we had. But it was thoroughly enjoying and a lot of information, a lot of knowledge transfer you've been able to do. I'm sure the new authors, the young authors, they all listen to you. And this will come out on YouTube and I think all the other media by I think over the next 12 hours. So you can also forward it to your team, your people, which I definitely do. Thanks so much,
Perfect.
Nupur. Thanks so much, Richa. We'll call it an evening and wish you a very happy weekend going ahead. Bye.
You too. Have a great weekend full of writing and
Thank
food.
you. Yeah,
Yes.
thanks.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.